computer. All right, and let me make James the host. Where are you, James?
I'm the co-host, so I'm.
Are you? Perfect.
Yeah, I've been letting people
just
in.
Let people in. I'm going to turn off the little bell because we're recording.
Okay.
So just keep your eye out on
Yes,
that,
sir.
please. All right, everybody, welcome. This is Joe Martinez and Mr. Elijah Corujo. We're going to be hosting today's production call. The whole point of this call is to help you produce and help a family. What we ask for y'all is to have a pen and notepad out, take lots of notes, and actually go apply it in your appointments. Some of the stuff may sound a little weird. You will be uncomfortable if you've never done any of this stuff, but we ask you to start implementing it into your appointments. I guarantee you will get a nugget that will help you write some more business and help a family. And then what we ask, because we're a big community inside the Cook hierarchy, and what I ask all of y'all humbly is if anything that you use from these calls, and it helped you help a family, post it on Band, be specific. Hey, you know what? Elijah said this, or this is what I heard on the call, and I used this line and it helped me close and help this family, right? So that other agents can get that information. Y'all do a really good job of it. I just love to ask that humbly every single week, because we are one big team and it helps all of us. So we'll get started. Today, what we're going to do is really, first, let me just kind of edify you a little bit, Elijah, because, I've said this quite a bit, and I hope everyone on this call really understands why we have Elijah on this call. Pound for pound, Elijah, you have been one of the best producers virtually more than anything in this transition, right? And why I say virtually so was so much important for all of y'all, right? We normally, before a lot of y'all are new, I consider myself a dinosaur in the insurance game already because I came from 5 years. You're a veteran. In just 5 years, right? 5 years, we feel like dinosaurs in the game because we were running appointments in the home, Elijah, right? We were driving to people's houses, and here was the cool part: when you're face to face, that trust and that level, and it was just easier to write business. I'm just gonna say it out loud, right? It was just easier. Yeah. Like if we walked in a home, Elijah, we were like at an 80 to 90% close rate.
Yeah, the trouble was getting them to make sure they were home when we were.
Yeah, like if you walked in a home, if you just followed the script, it was almost guaranteed, right? Like at 80 to 70%, even as a new agent, you were gonna help that family, and it's just gotten a little bit harder. But Elijah, you have just amplified, right, a virtual appointment, and you were one of the pioneers for Symmetry to start doing virtual appointments. And I can humbly say I wasn't. When we were in virtual, I struggled so much. You were one of the persons I would reach out to and ask a lot of questions, what you're doing. And over the past 3 years, really, you have just fine-tuned your ability to help a family virtually, and that's why we have you on the call. And you had a great idea yesterday of we're going to kind of role play of what you actually do. So I want to start from the beginning of booking the appointment, what you're doing, kind of reminders, because I know last time we had you on the call, we went through your numbers and you have a high show rate, or you have a good show rate. But then you have a really great close rate, right? So if you're sitting with them and you're on a virtual appointment, you're helping a family. And then what's more important, is you have really big applications.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have a higher APV than normal. And the reason behind that is you're bringing a lot of value in your appointments. So I really want to dig into that. So we'll kind of go through phases through your appointment. And please, anyone, unmute yourself throughout and ask any questions. We do want this to be back and forth. We want to answer all the questions for y'all. Just keep it, related to the topic. That way they're a quick question, we get it answered and we move forward so we can get through the whole thing. But let's start from the beginning, Elijah, right? You're calling leads, and you work a lot of B1 leads. That's probably what, 80-90% of your business?
Yep. Yeah, I'm working primarily B1s. I will recently took a couple lighthouse leads. I wanted to test those out and see what that was like. And almost all the business I wrote last week, I want to say 6,300 last week. Almost all of that was on lighthouse leads. But we're in June now. I was pulling up my numbers. Am I able to share my screen here? Joe, can you enable me to, or can James, if you want to make me a co-host, I want you to just share.
You can share.
This is, no, it ain't letting me. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Anyways,
go.
but
Now you can.
beautiful. This is just my opt account. So far this year, 109 applications for 154 grand. Almost all of these applications have been on B1 leads. And so I'll show you guys exactly how many leads I took too. It won't let me open up 2 pages at once. But I like B1s because of the mindset that you can work them with, and they're really low pressure. So when you're new, if you want to, they're just more accessible. A B1 lead is $10 for me, versus if you wanted to go get an A lead, you're going to be spending like $70 per lead. There's nothing wrong with that. You're going to make money on them, but it's easier to get more chances at bat and increase your odds of closing a deal when you have more leads. And so when people ask me like, oh, well, why do you work bonus leads? Because I get almost the same result on a bonus lead as I would a lead mortgage protection lead, but my lead investment is a fraction of the cost. And I've done both. I've gone through seasons where I've invested $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a week in A leads. And I've done those $30,000 and $40,000 months in personal production. And then I've also done the $400 to $600 a week lead investment in B1 leads and still gotten that $25,000 to $35,000 a month volume. And I prefer that because it's less pressure. I'm not on the hook for $1,000 every single week, which adds up if you're trying to do recruiting. And so that's just a little bit of insight into why I work those leads. And then the script that I use, I give it out like candy. I can put it in the chat, or I can add a file to Band for you guys to download it. But we'll start with the phone call. Like, what do I say to book the appointment? All of this is covered in Summit. But my intro is what I want you folks to grasp, because you can use the best script that works. You can use my script. My script is just a slight adaptation from the best script. My number one piece of advice is if you are dialing, I'm talking to you. Like, if you actively are booking appointments, if you are struggling to book more than 10 appointments per week, you have to get above 10 appointments booked per week to get traction. If you're not booking 10, you need to adjust your expectations of yourself, because you're going to struggle to have high volumes of production, or even, I would dare say, consistent volumes of production if you're booking that. And to book 10, there's a little recipe. First thing is you need enough leads. Like I just told you guys, I'm doing $400 to $600 a week in leads. That gets me between 40 and 60 B1s. On B1s, you're going to book about 1 out of every 5 people you talk to, give or take. If you're better on the phones, you might book 1 out of every 3 to 4. If you're super new, you might book maybe 1 out of every 6 or 7. But the ratio is still good.
And I want to add on the script, right? It's all of y'all start with the best system, right? The best script.
Mm-hmm.
You will find what works for you, but you have to start with the best system, because you got to get good at asking being able to lock it down, get all the health questions, right? Like, I know when y'all are on dial sessions, you'll hear different agency owners use different scripts. Realize we all started with the best system, and now we have just kind of made it our own, and we're comfortable with what we say and the way we say it. But every single script, doesn't matter what you hear, we are following the best system, right? Which we're being busy, we're establishing why we're calling, we're setting the appointment, and we're tying it down, right? And that's what's important, right? Like, I love that everyone loves, hearing different scripts. Don't change anything, right? Unless you're getting good. And then anytime you make a change, it's with your agency owner, right? Or your mentor.
Yeah.
Right? Because we want you to be able to book appointments. And if you want to add to that, right? Because me and you started with the best system, word for word.
Yep. And the reasoning too is, when you're new, you have what we call unconscious incompetence. All that means is you don't know what you don't know. It's going to be really difficult for you to get good if you're starting out and you're working 2 or 3 or 4 different scripts at the same time. Because the goal is to have it memorized. Because when you call somebody, nothing's worse than sounding like you're reading a script. Hey, is this Joe Martinez? Hey, Joe, this is Elijah. You don't want to sound like that because it's awkward. It's clunky. You're not going to build any sort of rapport with somebody enough to where they're one, going to book an appointment with you, two, stay on the phone long enough for you to explain who you are, what you're calling about, and determining if that person is even qualified to be a client in the first place. The goal is to do that. And so here's how I do it. When I call a lead, I just put my script in the chat, by the way. If anybody wanted to see it, I am an Apple user, so if it doesn't sync with your Microsoft, just convert it to a PDF and that'll do it for you. But this is what my script sounds like. The first 30 seconds are the key. Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe. This is Elijah Corujo calling you and Sandra here. I'm just one of the caseworkers and senior field underwriters here at the Mortgage Protection Center. Hey, I was just giving you a quick phone call. I needed to see if you remembered getting in the mail a while back. It was one of those postcards about mortgage protection. Do you remember getting one and filling it out? Could have been a
Yeah,
while.
it was a while back ago.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's the reason I'm giving you a call here. Is probably a couple weeks ago. It was sent to the 123 Anywhere Street address over there in Phoenix, right?
Yeah, we just got the house not too long ago.
Okay, awesome. And when you would have gotten this postcard, it was just talking about the mortgage protection. It's the coverage that pays off your home if something were to happen to you or your wife. I got your age here is 28 and Sandra's is 27. Is that right?
Yeah.
Boom. And so that's just like the normal intro. And what I want you guys to catch is in the very beginning of the script, I ask a very disarming question. And that question is, do you remember doing that? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Regardless of their answer, you can go to the next line, which is verifying the address, which they will always say yes to because it's correct. And so when I'm calling leads, what I want you guys to really get to is when you're calling them, you're not calling to talk these people into an appointment. That's a big mistake a lot of new people make, where your calendar is completely open and you're trying to fake being busy with someone that you're calling in order to book an appointment. And really what you want to do is sort through these leads. And so when I get 60 leads, I'm not booking 60 appointments, right, Joe? Like when you get 60 leads, you might talk to 45 people and book 9 or 10. That's great because you don't want to book an appointment with everybody. The goal is to figure out, do they remember getting it? If they do, great. You're just moving on. If they don't remember getting it, it's okay. I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. My goal is to figure out if you've been helped. Have you been helped with this coverage? And so that's another question that I'll ask in the script. If you're working the best script, just add those 2 simple questions to somewhere in the beginning of your intro. I'm not telling you need to learn an entirely new script. Keep doing what you're doing, but if you add those 2 questions in the very beginning, that is how I book solid appointments on leads that another agent previously called, because that's what a B1 is. That's why it's discounted. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going kind of fast. Yeah, what's up, Samantha? I saw your hand first. Michael, I see you too.
Elijah, would you be able to do a quick role play just like you did, but with Joe being maybe a little bit more,
Rigid.
like, yeah, exactly. Like, I just love to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe. This is Elijah Corujo calling you and Sandra here. I'm just one of the caseworkers and senior field underwriters here at the Mortgage Protection Center. I was just giving you a quick call back. I know I probably caught you while you're at work. I needed to see if you or your wife remembered getting one of those postcards about mortgage protection. Looked like you might have called in on it a while back.
I didn't.
Okay. Now I hear you. Sometimes my wife Maggie will call in on stuff that I get without telling me. This would have been a postcard that you guys might have gotten from Movement Mortgage. They sent it to the 123 Anywhere Street address.
I remember all those letters, but I think we said we weren't going to do that.
Okay. No, I hear you. Has somebody already helped you? Were you shown like some really expensive options for that coverage?
I think somebody talked to my wife and she said it was just expensive.
Okay. No, that's the reason I'm giving you a call, man. I'm helping about, I want to say 12 or 13 families a week over in your area. And I'd say probably about 4 or 5 times a week, I talk with a family who was shown some really expensive stuff. Was it by any chance, did Sandra mention if it was like $200 and $300 a month for that coverage that you guys were shown?
Yeah, I'm sure it was something like that. So I mean, I don't think we're interested.
Hey, I wouldn't be either if that's the price they were giving me. My job is to make sure you have the accurate rates. I'm one of the senior field underwriters here, and normally prices for this coverage range between, I would say, about 65 to like 150. I see here you're only 38 and a non-smoker. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't plan on starting smoking anytime soon either, do you?
No, I hate that stuff.
Okay. Well, between you and me, Joe, I wouldn't keep you on the phone this long if I thought I was wasting your time. But if you're a non-smoker and you don't have a terminal illness, you're not by any chance dragging an oxygen machine behind you either right now, are you?
No, we're healthy. That's why I don't understand why it was so expensive. I mean, again, probably why we're not interested.
I hear you. So tell you what, I just want to make sure we get you the right prices because it definitely is not going to run you $300 a month. I know this coverage was important to you. If you like, I can get you guys these options maybe tomorrow afternoon when you folks get home from work. It might take 10 minutes. Would that be worth it to you? Or is this just not, is protecting your family with this coverage just not something you need?
I mean, if it only takes 10 minutes, because I mean, we've already went through a presentation and it was, again, expensive.
Okay. Well, hey, what I'll do, I've got a spot. What time are you normally getting off work during the week, Joe? Are you guys typically home like after 5 or before
We get off
5?
at 5, so we're normally home by like 5:30.
Okay. I know you guys probably are not wanting to take a phone call right after walking in the door. I've got a spot tomorrow at about 6:30, and my last one's at 7:30. Again, something like this might take me 10 or 15 minutes just to show you the coverage and kind of explain how it works. Would you prefer the 6:30 or does the 7:30 work better for you?
Let's do 7:30.
Okay. And if you follow my script, I went a little bit off script because he threw a lot of objections, just so you guys are aware. And this does happen. Okay. You're going to get people who are rigid. You're going to get people who don't want to be talking to. You're going to get people who you're going to pull out all the stops like I just did, and they're still not interested. And that's okay. There's a concept called go for no. And I'm going to get Joe to tell me no at least 5 times before I'm like, okay, this dude, I'm wasting my time now at this point. And so I'm letting him know, first of all, the reason he wasn't helped previously by asking questions. Hey, were you by any chance shown stuff that was super expensive, like $200 and $300 a month? You guys would not believe how many appointments I book in a given week by using that line. There are so many people who sent in a postcard for mortgage protection. They're 68 years old, and some agent in their first 6 months showed them a $672 a month 10-year term that does not make any sense for their situation. And that client thinks that that's all that they qualify for, and that's what mortgage protection is. And then an agent like myself comes in, and I realize that that's what happened, and know that they were only shown one type of mortgage protection. But there's a few different types. You got a full payoff, you got a partial payoff, you got critical period coverage, you got debt-free life now. There's so many different things you can help people with. A lot of these families, as you're calling and sorting through them, a lot of them were only shown one option, and that one option was so expensive, and that is why they didn't buy. And so if you can get good at recognizing that their knee-jerk reaction to saying, hey, I'm not interested, it's likely that that's why. And so just recognize that, get uncomfortable pushing back a little bit, because your job is to help them. Their guard is initially going to be up because they think that you're just trying to sell them another thing for $300 or $400 a month. And my average app size is not that high, just so you guys are aware. So I'll go a little bit into what my appointment looks like. We could do a training for 5 days straight on dialing and booking appointments. You guys
Can we just hit a few?
Yeah.
What do you do for locking it down? Right. So they booked
Yeah.
the event really quick. Just what do you send for confirmations?
So I do a couple things. There's a few things that I just want to point out. Whenever I book an appointment, I'm on the phone with that client for probably about 6 minutes. If you're on the phone for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes, they're probably going to forget about you. Okay. And so the longer you're on the phone, the better. If you can make conversation and say something that's kind of memorable, if let's say you call somebody and their dog is just going crazy in the background, that happens from time to time when I'm dialing, my dogs are going nuts and the person I'm calling can hear that. Hey man, sorry, my dogs are going crazy right now. I'm sure you've got a couple pets, you know how it is. Stuff like that can keep you on the phone long enough and separate you from just being a quick telemarketer who's on and off the phone in 2 minutes. And so I'm on the phone for a minimum of 6 if I'm booking the appointment. Now, if they're already got it taken care of or they're just not interested, I'm on and off the phone as fast as possible because my job is to call through these 60 leads I just bought, and I got to do it in 2.5 days. Otherwise, I'm going to be backlogged next week. And so that's kind of a tip to locking it down. Another one is I have them write down the time. So if I booked an appointment with you at 7:30, hey Joe, you got something you could write with real quick, like a pen or a notepad handy?
Yeah.
Take your time. Go ahead and grab it. And then I have them write down my name, mortgage protection, the time, and I have them sometimes write down my phone number. I'm totally fine giving that out to clients. Back in the day, I wouldn't because they would call and cancel all the time when I'm driving 4 freaking hours one way to Delaware to run an appointment. And so nowadays it's a different ballgame. I don't care if they cancel because I'm at home. But I'll have them write it down after I'm on the phone with them for 6 minutes. I'll have them check their email because I'm sending them a Zoom link from my Google Calendar while I'm on the phone with them. And I ask them, hey, did that email come through? I just want to make sure it didn't go to your junk folder. That's another one. And then I'll firm it up at the very end and I'll say, look, Joe, I know this coverage is important to you. I've got about 10 other families I'm helping this week. It's really important that I can get to everybody. Is there any reason you can think of that time will not work for you? Anything you could think of, or is that time solid? And guys, I just want you to know, like, you can do all of that. You can confirm it 6 times and you will still get no-showed every now and then. I called an appointment yesterday at 2 p.m., booked him for 6 p.m. and he no-showed me. So like, it's gonna happen. Just chalk it up, just laugh at it. It is what it is. My show rate right now is like 63 to 69%. It is not 100%. So if I book 15 appointments, I'm going to sit with like 10 or 12, which is phenomenal. And so do those things and that'll improve your show ratio. The last thing I'll say, and I'm sure everybody's already good about this, but don't book appointments for more than 2 days out. If it's Thursday and I'm calling leads, I'm booking them for tonight or tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night. I'm not booking them for Saturday. I'm going to wait till Friday to book them for Saturday, if that makes sense. Philip, I saw your hand, buddy. And Michael, I saw you too.
Yeah, I think you just answered my question. I was going to ask, okay, like let's say you're calling them Monday and they say, oh, like we got so much going on this week. So like the weekends are the best time, like for us when we're off work. So then you call them like the day before to see if you can still book them like the next day when they're available.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So my wife's making a smoothie in the background, so blender's kind of loud. If I get somebody who's really busy, I just tell them, hey, no worries. I appreciate you letting me know. How about I give you a call maybe Friday or Saturday, and we'll just make sure that Monday still works. Is that okay? And so I don't book that appointment because what I was finding, Philip, I used to do that. And I would give myself like a false sense of being busy because I'd have 4 appointments booked for next week. But in reality, none of them are going to show up because I booked them for 5 days prior. You know what I mean? And so you're going to get people like that. I just make a note and I say, hey, would it be okay if I gave you a call back in a couple of days and then we found a time that worked? I have found that I'm more likely to book an appointment that shows up and close it versus booking an appointment like 3 or 4 or 5 days out. You guys are welcome to try it. If you get somebody who's like super solid, gauge it. I mean, you're the one calling them, but I have found that most of the appointments that I book more than that time frame for just mortgage protection. Okay, I'm not talking about like annuities or debt-free life, like that's a different animal. But for just mortgage protection, that's what I do. Or I run it on the spot. Sometimes you'll call people and you could just do a 1-sit close. You happen to catch them at a good time. that's always the best.
And Michael, if you had a question really quick, and then that way we
Yeah.
can dig into the appointment.
And then Elijah, when the people that no show you, what do you do with them? So the guy talked at 2 o'clock, supposed to show up at 6 o'clock.
Yep.
What-
I just keep calling them because they're in my lead stack. I keep reaching out to them as if I'd never really talked to them before. And if I get them back on the phone, it's simple. Hey, Michael, I'm not sure if something came up. Wasn't able to connect with you yesterday. Wanted to see if maybe tonight or tomorrow at 6 would work better for you. I'm very assumptive about rescheduling. Sometimes stuff comes up. Don't take it personally if you get no-shows. It's not that they're always wanting to avoid you. Now, Joe, we've all had those leads that you call, you book an appointment, they no-show you, then they block your number, and then when you call them next time, it just goes straight to voicemail every time. Leads like that, you just want to slide them over to your, I guess, stack of leads that you can kind of comb through if you want periodically. But Michael, definitely reach back out to them. I will send them a text and say, hey, I'll call first. I'll call during the appointment. I'll call 5 minutes after. So I called that guy at 6:05 because he wasn't on the Zoom meeting. He obviously didn't answer, left him a voicemail, texted him this morning. I'm just little warm touches to try to get back in touch with them. I move on from a lead after I've tried reaching out to them at least 10 times. I keep track of how many times I've called a lead. That's not 10 times in a day. That's not 10 times in 2 days. That's 10 times like over the course of a week at different times of the day.
And how are you tracking that?
It's a great question. So I have all of my leads. I download a PDF from Opt and I edit the PDF. So you can print your leads and you can literally write on it if you're old school like that. That works too. I like to have it digital on my computer so that I can see it right up next to my Google Calendar. And you can put a little text box on the PDF and put dialed 4 times, no answer. Every time I call them again, dialed 6 times, no answer.
And I'm gonna make Elijah sound like a dinosaur here, right? If you're on a dialer, it tracks all that for you automatically. It tells you when you've called, how long the calls, what were your communication. You can leave notes in them. The best way, right, is use technology for you, because that's what he's using, technology, right? If you're on a dialer, it's the best thing to do. So
Thank you.
and then Rodney, and then last
Yeah,
question
I had a question,
for
Elijah.
dialing, because then I want to get into the appointment. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
real quick. I'm wondering on those 10 touches because I find myself just, I don't know. I don't have, I'm constantly calling them. I wonder if you would treat it differently if it was an A lead, or are you treating it like that because, hey, it's a B1 lead. These are people that weren't getting in touch with before. I just tried to set an appointment. I've tried them 10 times in the last couple of weeks. I'm putting it to the other pile.
So most of the time, to be fair, I really don't work A leads that often anymore. When I did, I'll be straight up with you, Rodney. I worked them pretty much the same as I do like bonus leads. If anything, I was even more aggressive because I spent 5 times as much on the lead. And so I'm even more motivated to get in touch with that person. And so my system, if you will, is if I bought leads on Monday, I'm calling them Monday. Twice. I'm going to comb through. I'm going to double dial. That's 2 hits right there. The next morning, 9 to 11, I'm dialing again. That's 2 more hits. That's 4 dials right there by Tuesday.
And then this is mortgage protection, Rodney, right? Like this is not digital. Digital leads is a whole nother beast.
Yeah. If you're working Razor Ridge or Lighthouse or Level Up leads, texting is the primary mode of communication to get in touch with those leads. And they do, there's tons of trainings on that too. I'm just talking about dials. This is what my actual activity, this is how I track my activity, y'all. This is what my activity looked like last week. All of these little tick marks, I'm super old school with it. This is how I was taught to keep track of
You have a dialer now, Elijah.
Yeah, I don't, this works for me.
I love it.
And so last week I made like 450 something dials. That's in 1 week. And so out of those dials, I want to say I talked to like 40 something people. I booked 11 appointments. Last week was a light week and I sat with 7 families and wrote 5 apps for $6 grand. And so that's just one example of how that, like how many dials that is. And when I get leads, if I have leads from the previous week that are unresolved, best believe I'm still calling them again to try to get in touch with them. But here's the deal. If I've tried calling 10 times and it's one of those leads where it just goes straight to voicemail, quit bothering with it. Just add it to switchboard and let switchboard text them. I do that with old leads all the time.
I love it. Let's get into the
Yeah.
appointment. So
Yeah.
at this point,
So-
you send them an email, right? They got confirmation. We're showing up to the appointment. And then
Yeah.
you want to share screen or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm just gonna show you guys real quick show of hands. We have 61 people on this call. How many of you guys have never run an appointment before? Just so I can understand my audience a little bit. Never run an appointment. We got Chuck, Shamika, Michael, Holly. Okay, perfect. Awesome. How many of you guys? We've got a lot of people raising their hands. Fantastic. I'm glad you guys are tuning into this. I wanna just show you exactly how I run my appointment. Recognize that when you're running an appointment to help somebody with mortgage protection, there's sometimes a lot of pressure if you're new you just don't know what to say. You don't know what to say. You don't know what questions to ask. You don't know how to pivot from, okay, this is what we do. This is your need. And then transitioning from that to, okay, we found the coverage plan that fits your need and your budget. We're going to help you. A couple things that I want you guys to, if you're taking notes, your close ratio, if you can get them to show up the company average, okay, this is not mine, this is the company average close ratio is going to be about 50%. So if you sit with 10 families, you should write about 5 policies. If you sit with 15, you're going to write 6 to 8 policies every week. These numbers are super, super consistent. This even includes people who, like, you haven't even run your first one yet. And so the way that I run my appointment, if you go to Quility HQ, I'm going to share my screen here and just show you guys exactly where I get the PowerPoint. We're in HQ. Let's go to the home screen right quick. Everybody should have access to HQ. Somebody give me a thumbs up. You guys can see my screen, yeah?
Yep.
All right, bet.
And then while you're pulling that up, right, on average percentage, mortgage protection leads, how many are you doing Zoom? Like, what's the percentage of Zoom?
Man, it varies week to week. Zoom is my preferred. I like Zoom. I'm better on Zoom. People like me more on Zoom. It is what it is. And
Say nothing else. That's all we need to know.
When you're in sales, people buy from who they like. If you have a better phone voice and you're just more comfortable and better at connecting with people over the phone, lean into that. Ashley Richards, the #1 producer in our entire company. That woman does 100% phone sales. And so there's no like right or wrong way to do it. Figure out what works well for you. I do both. Last week, all I wrote was over the phone. I prefer Zoom though. Some weeks it's all Zoom. But I use this PowerPoint regardless if it's a phone or a Zoom appointment. So I'm sharing my screen. If you guys do not have this PowerPoint, I'm showing you where to get it. I did not create this PowerPoint myself. You just go right over here to carriers and products. Product concepts, mortgage protection, download this puppy right here. Download it and you can make changes to it. This is an example of a client that this is actually the appointment I had yesterday that no-showed me. So I'm going to run the appointment on you guys as if you all were my client. So Joe, you're going to be my mock appointment. How much time do we have? This will take, I'm going to go through it kind of quick.
Let's try to do it in like 15 minutes pretty quick. That way we can leave some time to answer questions.
Okay, so first thing I say, and I'm gonna run this as if I'm teaching you guys, not as if I'm in the appointment. Okay, to be fair too, what I'm wearing right now is my work from home uniform. I do not wear a suit on Zoom. I wear a hat most of the time. I'm casual. The people I'm helping are wearing sweatpants and freaking UGG boots half the time, and so it does not matter. Just mind your background. If you're on Zoom, recognize that what the people can see is going to pretty much dictate how credible you are. I'm not a big fan of blurring the background personally because I'm like, what are you trying to hide? Like clean up your office if you're doing this. Do a virtual background. I don't care. But I always let people know the company I work with is called Symmetry Financial Group. If you want to say Quility, go for it. I don't care. I also point out my license number at the bottom. That is my actual state insurance license number. And then I let people know, hey, really what my job For you folks today, Joe, I'm a broker. I work with about 35 insurance companies. And so my job is to help you and Sandra find the coverage that fits your need and your budget. We don't do anything if we can't check those two boxes. Now, it's really simple. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions about your home, a couple about your mortgage, some about kind of what you were needing to make sure that the coverage I'm showing you is applicable. And then if we can find a plan that protects your family in the way that you're wanting to, and it fits your budget, my job today, Joe, is to help you and Sandra apply for that coverage to get you all approved. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Boom. And so in your role and your purpose, if you're getting a lot of clients that say, oh, Elijah, we like you, but we need to think about it. You should really hone in on your role and purpose. It took me a while to get this dialed in. This is literally on the PowerPoint. Please, 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 no one likes people who read PowerPoints verbatim. That is the most boring crap ever. People will tune you out and stop listening if you're showing them a PowerPoint and you're being robotic, just reading it word for word. And so try to get good at having it memorized to where you don't need to do that. That's how you do that. Simple. So, Joe, this is what we do. I know the focus today is going to be mortgage protection. So I'm not going to spend 30 minutes going through all of these. On the asset management side of things, we have a program called Debt Free Life where they help people get out of debt, including their mortgage. And right now, annuities are pretty popular. On the health side of things, I think critical illness has been the most that I've seen come through. And then on the life side of things, mortgage protection and final expense are the biggest. Is there anything outside of mortgage protection that maybe you want more info on later, or you want to just focus on that for now?
I'd be curious on that debt free.
Okay, cool. And that's exactly what I say. And I just kind of make a little mental note. Okay, we'll come back to this later. Because it would be way too much to start going into the weeds of explaining debt-free life when they don't care about that right now. They want mortgage protection. Help the initial need first, and then you can come back to this later. But it's important to show this slide because here's the deal. If you don't ask questions about any of this stuff, you will only sell mortgage protection. If you don't ask about final expense, if you don't ask about retirement, if you don't ask about debt or any of this other stuff, very seldom are people going to ask and say, hey, do you do infinite banking that will help me get out of debt in 9 years? It's just not going to happen. So it's important to show this so that you're not a one-trick pony. And so, Joe, I'm going to verify some info. That way I can understand kind of your guys' situation a little bit better and make sure that the coverage I'm showing you makes sense and fits your needs. Believe it or not, Joe, people need less coverage than they think most of the time. But I got the loan amount is about $250,000. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, about 245 now.
245. Okay. Is that a 15 or a 30-year loan?
It's a 30.
30. Perfect. You guys probably just moved in, made your second payment. Are you folks paying anything extra on that mortgage payment right now? Probably not, but I always got to ask.
I mean, sometimes about $100.
Okay. And what does that monthly payment look like on that home? About 1,700, something like that?
Yeah, so it's 1,650, and sometimes we give about 1,750 to 1,800.
Okay. And then on the health side of things, you mentioned you guys are pretty healthy. You're not on oxygen, clearly. Are you being treated for anything right now? Maybe high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, COPD, anything at all that you've got on your...
No, none of us got anything. I mean, tacos keep us healthy, apparently.
There you go. You know, that's one of the 4 major food groups.
That and Whataburger.
Whataburgers and tacos. I like it. Any surgeries or hospitalizations in the last couple of years?
No, just the last time my wife had a baby.
Okay, fantastic. And no cancer, no strokes, nothing like that.
No.
Those are the health questions that I ask. You're gonna ask them again on the application. So don't feel like you need to spend 20 minutes doing a deep dive into their health. If people have something wrong with them, for the most part, they're going to tell you. Now, sometimes you get people who lie. It does happen. Sometimes you get people who forgot that they're prescribed Narcan or nitroglycerin or Eliquis. I don't know how you forget that you're on a blood thinner, but it happens. And so it's important to ask these questions, because if you want to get paid on the business you write, it has to get approved. And so this is how I know whether or not the plan I'm showing them, they're going to qualify for. Does that make sense to everybody real quick before I move on? Okay,
Yep.
cool. One little side tangent, a big tool that I would leverage is Virtual Mentor. If you don't have it, get with your upline. Make sure you have Virtual Mentor. It is free to you. That was my lifesaver when I was new. They'll tell you all about it. On the financial side of things, so Joe, the main thing I look at is life insurance, because if you and Sandra already have some coverage outside of work, it could dictate how much mortgage protection you do or don't need. About how much life insurance do you have in place right now? Anything at all outside of your employer?
I have a 50,000 and then I have 100,000 through work.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And that 50,000, what did you get that for? Was that kind of like for maybe final expense coverage? Is it a whole life policy term? What is that?
I believe it's a term. I got it through Farmers Insurance for my car.
Okay, no, they're a good company. They're a little pricey, but they're a good company. And then on the anything that your wife or family could inherit should something happen to you that might offset the mortgage. Maybe something like an old 401k that's collecting dust somewhere, or an IRA, or 100 grand in the Cayman Islands at all.
Not in the Cayman Islands, but I do have a 401k. I have about 80,000 from my prior job, and then from the one right now, we probably have about 50 in there.
Okay, perfect. That's all I ask. You're going to want to get really good at asking those questions in a way that's nonchalant. Joe, I learned this from you, buddy. The year you sold a crap ton of annuities, I was asking you, like, what are you doing? that was what you told me was.
Yeah, I love that right there, right? Anything you have in place that would act, or that your spouse would inherit. Right.
Yep.
And Elijah, I love it because I learned it from a new recruit that was out there asking, right? So when you get to this part, it's just simply asking, hey, you got life insurance, great. Anything out there that would act like life insurance, or that your beneficiary, right, would inherit? Large bank accounts, right? 401ks. That is the most invasive question to ask them, that they would be proud to tell you. Right? Because again, it's about them feeling comfortable. If you say, hey, Elijah, do you got a 401k or any large bank account, right, out there that's invasive? And they're like, you don't need to know that. Yeah. Right. But if you say, hey, anything that you have around that your spouse would inherit, right? They're like, yeah, I'm building up my financial wealth. My wife would inherit a 401k, right? My wife would inherit our $200,000 bank account. So that was the most invasive question that uncovered 9 annuities in a year.
There you go. So this is the verifying the information section. This is an important one to really not skip over, and to get good at being natural at. So in the needs analysis, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So during the appointment, I'm sharing my screen up until this point, and then I'm going to stop sharing, because this is the section of the appointment where you're going to want to ask them some really important questions to build emotion. So if you're taking notes, there's a 4-step process to this appointment, and we call this process the REAL system. The REAL system stands for rapport, stands for emotion, assumption, and locking it down. Super simple, really easy to remember. Rapport is getting them in the very beginning. I try to spend about 5 minutes really just making conversation, getting them comfortable with me, recognize that they're a person, and you need to just have a normal conversation and be relaxed. You don't want to be super rigid like you're a doctor combing through their finances. And I mean, recognize that we have a pretty challenging job, because we get paid to talk to strangers about death and money, right, Kevin? You've gotten really good at it, buddy, selling 14 grand in a week and 4,400 on just a casual Wednesday, bro. You have to get good at talking to people. And one of the best, I would say, skills that you need to get good at is being conversational, making people comfortable with you. And so I'm going to give you guys a couple questions that I ask during the E section of the REAL system, which is building emotion. insurance is an emotional purchase. It's really important to, and I see a question coming in here. Do I fill out the FIF form on the fly? Nope. Do that at the end. Do that at the end. Take care of mortgage protection first. But you got to recognize that people aren't buying insurance for themselves for the most part. I'm not talking about debt-free life and stuff that they can use while they're alive. I'm talking about stuff that pays their family after they're dead. And so people are buying this for their family. Their family is the one who is going to benefit from this. And I got really good at asking questions that help build emotion. And I'm going to go through some of these questions. You're welcome to write them down. I will copy them and put them in the chat as well. But I stopped sharing my screen at that portion and I say, Joe, what was your goal for this appointment today? The reason I'm asking is I want to keep your focus the main thing.
I just want to make sure, right? If I pass, Sandra has the house paid off, like it said on the
Okay.
form.
Yeah. Second question I ask. What has you looking at this coverage now rather than kicking this down the road like a lot of people do who end up leaving their family with all that financial burden?
One of our buddies passed away and just saw his wife struggling right now.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. So it sounds like you guys have been thinking about this for quite some time, or is it kind of like a recent thing that you and your wife have been talking about?
I switched jobs a couple years ago and found myself without coverage, which is when I got that $50,000 policy. So it's been on our mind probably past 5 years to have something in place. And then we got the house and I saw this letter.
Okay. And we, just to make sure, we're looking at putting coverage on you to protect your wife or coverage for both of you guys?
For sure me. If it's in the budget, we'll look at for Sandra, but for sure me.
Okay. And I'm really glad that you have that 50,000 in place. And you mentioned you got 100,000 through work, which is good too. Normally I don't really consider that coverage for the most part in regards to mortgage protection, because as you know, if you left your job, you leave your coverage for the most part. And your employer is the one who owns it. So if you became disabled or if you retired, it's going to stay there. So that 50,000 you do have is definitely better than nothing. But I'm looking at your mortgage, it's 250 grand. That wouldn't really go that far in light of your house itself. And you weren't really wanting that policy to be used to pay off the home. Could Sandra manage that $1,600 payment on her own? Would it be kind of tight? Like, what would it look like, Joe, if something happened to you 2 weeks ago?
Well, she doesn't work, and that's my main concern. So there is no income if I'm gone.
Absolutely. Based off what you have in the bank, any clue how long she could stay in the house before she would have to move in with family or figure something out?
A little embarrassing to say, but maybe 3 months.
Okay. So if something should happen to you tomorrow, she'd be in a pretty tight position by October or November, right?
Yeah, she'd definitely be looking for a job.
Okay. So we should probably look at putting some coverage in place today. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Those are the questions I ask. Now you can change the order with which you ask them. Sometimes you're going to get people who are ready to give you their account number and buy some dang insurance, and you don't need to ask 7 questions. You're going to get in your own way. And so read the situation and just gauge. But if you have somebody who's not quite on like the same page as you, go through those questions, but do so in a way that you're not trying to point out the obvious. Okay. They sent in a letter and showed up to an appointment to buy insurance. We know that that's what we're talking about, but you want to help them see just how serious the situation is. Because if you don't, and you're going to show them prices, they're just going to say, well, Elijah, this is good, but I need to think about it. We've already established that literally if something happened, we got 3 months before it being a destitute situation. We need to get this taken care of. And so this brings me to the third letter in the real system, which is assumption. At this point, I'm expecting them to pick an option that fits their need and their budget. And this is where I start sharing my screen again. Let me see if I can do this right. Here we go. Am I helping you guys so far? Is somebody getting some value out of this? All right, cool. So there's three ways, Joe, that we could cover the mortgage. And I just want to explain these three so you and Sandra could be in a good position to know which one is for you. Okay. Let me know if one of these doesn't fit. But the first way we could do it is what's called a full mortgage payoff. This is basically a policy for 250 grand, pays off the whole house if anything happens to you. This is going to be the most expensive one I show you. And the cool part about this plan is it's not just going to cover you if you die. It's going to cover you if you became really sick with like a terminal illness or a chronic illness. Maybe you have a stroke and you can't work like you used to. This policy is going to pay out while you're still alive. Also, if something happened to you, Joe, in, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, you guys aren't still going to owe 250 grand on the house, but the full payoff will still pay the full 250. Does that make sense? Because with term policies, I'm sure everybody's aware, face amount's level during the length of that term. And so if I sell somebody a 30-year, $250,000 policy and something happens to that family in 20 years, they might only owe 50 grand on their house. Sandra still gets a check for 250. This is creating value because then you can sell the full payoff as life insurance and mortgage protection. Because if something happened in 15 years, she's going to get a tax-free check for 250 grand. That will more than pay for the home. The family can use that money however they need to. The second way we could do it is what's called a partial payoff. Now, partial payoff it's just less coverage, therefore it's cheaper. So maybe we do 150 or maybe we do 100,000. The partial payoff's a good fit if the full does not quite fit the budget comfortably. It's exactly what I say. Third one is a little bit different. We call this one equity protection. Think about this one though, Joe, as mortgage payment protection. Now, this plan is really big with folks who are retired. Maybe they're living on a fixed income. Maybe they've got a couple health issues to where the full payoff or the partial they don't qualify for. Equity protection buys time. And so if something should happen to you, this plan is going to pay the mortgage for Sandra for maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. It does not pay off the whole house. This buys time for them to figure out what they're going to do. If they're going to sell the home, they now have time to sell it for what it's worth. If they just need some time to acclimate to life without you, this plan buys them time to do so without worrying about who's going to make that $1,600 payment next month. Now, I could show you any one of these three, Joe, but between the full, partial, and equity protection, which one are you thinking kind of fits your needs best?
I'd like to see the full mortgage payoff.
Okay, absolutely. And so I'm going to show you a few different options. We're not paying for anything right now. We want to make sure we can find a plan that fits your need and your budget. If some of these are outside of the budget, I need you to just let me know. My company actually will not let me apply you for coverage that you can't afford. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I roll into showing them the money. Okay. This is a slide that you can edit a little bit on your PowerPoint. This is just what I did. You want it to be simple. You don't want it to be super cluttered, showing graphs of an illustration. We're looking at term insurance, y'all. So keep it straightforward. For this particular client, they were in their 30s. This is a policy with Americo on a 30-year term, full living benefits, baby. So Joe, if we went with this plan, the full mortgage payoff, the one that you were looking at is $70 a month for you. That same plan on Sandra's $58. If we were to do the partial payoff, it's $53 a month for you and $44 for her. If we did the full payoff, this one comes with a rider called the cashback option. Now you pay extra for this one. This is just an option. I show it to everybody under age 50. But this plan, think about it like a savings account that comes with some good insurance, because if you don't die, the insurance company gives you all your money back. And so you are essentially insured for free. That one's $140 for you and $127 on her. Now, a couple quick things I just want to mention. The price is locked in. And so as you get older, this is not one of those policies that's going to go up every 5 years. The second is you all can mix and match. If you don't think Sandra needs the same amount of coverage as you, we don't have to do the same policy for her. We could add her on later if you want. But at first glance, is there a plan that fits your need and your budget because you guys told me you were shown options that were about $300 a month previously. I don't know why, but between these three, is there one that you think would work for you all?
I mean, can I do the full mortgage payoff and maybe the partial for her?
100%. That would be about 114 a month. Is that comfortable for you all?
Yeah, that's what I feel good with.
Boom. That is locking it down. The last step of the real system. From here, I stop sharing my screen and I'm just like, Joe, I'm gonna move over to the application real quick. We're just gonna ask you a couple quick health questions and get this submitted for you, okay? I'm very assumptive. I'm not asking for permission. I literally stop sharing my screen for 2 seconds. I pull up the Americo e-app and I start sharing my screen again. Like, it's simple as that. The only thing I do different if I'm running a phone appointment is we're not on Zoom. That is it. I still have the PowerPoint because I use it as like an outline to make sure I'm going through the right steps. I'm taking the client through a very comfortable process of putting them in a position to want to buy my product. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Because if you are forceful or if you just are quickly too fast to go to prices, you're going to make the mistake of just becoming a quoting generator, and you're going to get into a really hard to break cycle of running quick rushed appointments, and you're not going to get people to the point where they're going to fill out an application with you without a hiccup. And so that's what I do. Any questions on that?
You know, I just, out of those slides, what do you think is the most important? Where do you find the most value? Because you can hear it, right, where it triggers for a client. Like for you,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most important one to go over or get the best at?
Role and purpose and asking the questions in the needs analysis. When you go through your role and purpose, you establish that you are there to help them find coverage that fits their need and their budget. You also go over that, hey, we are applying for coverage because until you're approved, Sandra's not protected. And then we're also in the needs analysis section, we're going over just how big of a need there is. And I'll be honest with you guys, sometimes I run appointments and I have a client who has $1.2 million in term insurance and a $300,000 mortgage, and they don't really need another policy per se. And folks like that, I'm very honest with, and I'm like, hey, if you want to get another policy, I'll write it for you, but I don't really think that you need it. And so sometimes you'll uncover the opposite, that they don't really need your help. And so you can kind of pivot another direction. But those 2 slides, if you can get good at them, will have, in my opinion, one of the biggest impacts on your close ratio when you're running an appointment. I saw Angelia had a question, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how you went through the 3 different options. Can you kind of touch base on what you do if you're working with someone like older or a lot of health conditions and it's only final expense? Like, how do you put into perspective where it's still like ball is still in their court,
Yep.
but really there's only one option?
Love this question. Thank you for asking this, Angie. So I'll be straight up with you guys. I would say over half of the business I write is on clients who fit that description. They're old, they're unhealthy, and there's no way in hell they're going to qualify for a term. And you're wasting your time showing them options like that. And so I would say first, you need to go watch the training that Jordan and Jared did on running a critical period appointment. That is step 1. Okay. And I'll give you the 30-second how I do it. I do it the same way they do, but it starts in where I'm explaining the options to them. Okay. So you're going to get clients who are over 65. Maybe they've got some health issues to where they wouldn't qualify for a term, or you got somebody who's old and they got a big mortgage, like $400,000 or $500,000. They are a critical period client right there. And selling someone like that, it starts by explaining the options in such a way that make it really obvious which one is going to be in their best interest. And so here's how I do it. If I'm talking to Joe, let's say Joe's an old guy. Joe, there's really 3 ways we could go about covering the home. We could do what's called a full mortgage payoff. It's gonna basically be a policy for 250 grand, pays off the whole house if something happens to you. This plan is made for folks who are, I would say, under 50, maybe bought their first home, still have kids living with them, and they don't really have any health issues. Once you get over 50, it becomes to get kind of pricey. It can get a bit expensive. Once you're over 60 or 65, sometimes the full payoff costs as much as a mortgage payment. And in situations like that, I wouldn't really recommend it. I would probably suggest just paying off the home if it was going to run you $600 or $700. Would you agree? They always say yes, and that puts them at ease knowing that you are on their side. You're not just trying to show them something that costs an insane amount.
And I love that, right? I wouldn't remove that slide. I see a couple of y'all ask that question because you devalue it, right? Devalue, like use it to devalue that, right? Remember, they get a form that says pay off the full mortgage. They're coming into the appointment. Hey, I want my full mortgage payoff. Leaving the slide in and devaluing it lets you open their eyes to this is why we're doing this, not that, right? You want $1,000 payment, right? You devalue it and you take the power away from it. And then you get their mind to agree with you, right? Because then it's their idea, not yours, to go to the critical period, right? Because they're like, oh, well, we should probably do this. Hey, great idea. I agree with you, Elijah. We should do this, right? It's their idea. Never split the difference teaches you to do that, right? The full mortgage payoff is an anchor as y'all get into the book, right? The full mortgage payoff of $1,000 a month premium is the anchor, and y'all will understand anchor as y'all get through that book of why you don't want to take that slide out. You actually want to sit it there, because what if somebody says yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time it's just an anchor to take them off that idea for themselves.
So true. So true. And then what you want to do is then show them the value of critical period coverage. And so the way that I explain it is, the third way we could do it, Joe, happens to be my favorite. We call it equity protection. Think about it, though, as the mortgage payment protection. What this plan does is it makes your monthly mortgage payment. Okay, so I named it something else that makes more sense. Sometimes people don't understand equity protection because they don't have equity. They just made their second freaking mortgage payment. They just bought their house. And so there's no equity to protect. So
that's the nugget. I hope y'all wrote it down, right? This is the mortgage protection payment option.
Or mortgage payment protection plan.
Mortgage payment.
Say it however you want, because you want to make it simple, because it's important to understand your audience and your demographic. You're talking to little Miss Old Betty who is overwhelmed by insurance that's confusing. And that is the only reason she hasn't bought a policy yet, is because no one has explained it in a way that makes sense. On paper, critical period coverage is a small whole life policy. That's what it is on paper. But what it does is it pays the monthly mortgage payment for 6 months to 2 years. Now, the way that I tell it to the client is this. Joe, the third way we could cover the mortgage happens to be my favorite. We call this one mortgage payment protection. This plan is really big with folks who are retired. Maybe they're living on a fixed income. Maybe they've got a couple health issues to where the full payoff they wouldn't qualify for. Your kids are grown, and this plan is the most affordable of all three. Now, I can show you any one of these three, but between the full payoff, the partial, and the mortgage payment protection plan, which one do you think fits your needs best? If you stack it like that, where you devalue the full, because here's the deal, they don't qualify. But people don't want to hear that you don't qualify for insurance. They want to be told, here's the solution, and it happens to be the most affordable one. It's a completely different buying experience. Does that make sense, guys? You also, it's not what it is as much as it's what it does. What it is a $10,300 face amount Dignity Solutions whole life policy. What it does is it pays the mortgage for Sandra for 8 months if something happened to Joe. Which one sounds better? It's the same freaking thing. And when you do that, this is what the slide looks like when you're doing equity protection. It's really important that it looks simple, because if you're dealing with old clients, this is what this slide looks like. So you have mortgage payment protection, the amount of time that the plan buys. If you're curious how you do this, take their monthly mortgage payment. Let's say it's $1,000. A year and a half of mortgage payments is going to be what is that? A $16,000 policy. A year is 12,000 or 18,000. I'm sorry. And then 6 months is a $6,000 policy. You're not telling them this is a $12,000 whole life policy. No, Joe, this one gets you a year of mortgage payments. This one gets you a year and a half. This one gets you 6 months. Which one do you think fits your needs and your budget best? When you set it up that way, you're gonna help a lot more people with this plan. Now, Jeff, I saw you raised your hand, man. You've been patient. What's your question, buddy?
Hi, Elijah. Great stuff. Hey, my quick question. So we establish, the value of why we're there. We establish the emotion. We get into the emotional part of the decision because all decisions break down to emotion at some point. And then we found something for Joe that he has said fits into his budget. Now, all you guys that have done this long enough will understand where I'm coming from here. And so we get to that point and he says, I like option number 2 for me, or option number 1 for me, and option number 2 for Sandra. And we really like that. Great. And I always say, okay, great. What's your middle initial? And I go right into the application.
Love that.
But, so then Joe says, well, I'm a little different and I like what I'm seeing. Let me get with Sandra and, I'm a little different than some people. We like to think about it, pray about it, talk about it. What do you do to A, overcome that? And if B, you can't, what's your process to get back with them? Because I'm finding that a lot lately. I don't know if it's the weather or what it is. But...
That's a phenomenal question, Jeff. And I do it one of 2 ways. The first way that I do it is in my role and purpose. You can kind of overcome to think about it before they ever tell you they need to think about it. I always let them know, hey, what we're doing today is making sure you qualify. Jeff, you're not paying for anything right now. You and your wife, you got time I want you guys to think about it because the plan that we're doing, I want to make sure it's exactly what you guys are needing. All we're doing today is making sure you qualify. Between you and me, the insurance company has to think about it first. They have to tell me whether or not they will cover you for this plan. And then once you're approved, I just let you know, and you guys can tell me if we need to change it and we can adjust it. But we want to make sure you qualify. I would hate for you all to spend a week or 2 thinking about it and praying about it and making sure it's what you want. And then we apply and then you get declined. I don't want to waste your time. And so all we're doing today is just kind of getting the ball rolling. Does that make sense? And so I say it just like that. You're going to do all that too, Jeff, and some people will still not be ready to buy. I always want to give that little disclosure. I, to this day, still get think about it occasionally. Whenever you do, there's an acronym that I learned when I first started called BAM FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. And so if you run an appointment and they tell you, hey, Elijah, we like you. We like this plan. This is the one we want. Book a follow-up appointment. Don't just leave it open-ended of, okay, well, we'll just get back together in an undisclosed period of time and maybe possibly find a plan that you like. You won't close it. And so make a note on the lead. I make a note on the lead, ran an appointment, think about it. And I book a time to follow back up with them. I ran an appointment on Saturday with a gentleman who picked a plan. He was like, that's the one I want, but I need a couple days. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to push it. Sometimes you can push it, but gauge the client, because sometimes if you're too pushy, you'll lose the sale. And I would rather close it in a week than not close it at all. And so I booked a follow-up with him for today, actually. And so I covered in the role and purpose to make sure people know, hey, all we're doing is applying to make sure that you even qualify. We can always change the plan. And then here's the deal too. Try to save yourself from chargebacks. If you think that they're going to cancel the plan, just don't freaking write it. And I tell people this too, like, look, if you're planning on canceling this in a week, we probably shouldn't even apply. But if you think you need this coverage, which clearly you do, because in 3 months, if you passed away, Sandra's going to be homeless. why don't we make sure you qualify? And then if we need to change this plan to fit your budget differently, we can do that at any time. And that puts people at ease.
I gotta cut us off. Thank you, everyone. We will definitely follow up with some more training next Thursday on this. This is some good stuff. Maybe kind of digging into the real system a little bit better. But thank you so much, Elijah.
Happy to help.
If you could post your script and those questions in band, that would be
Yeah.
awesome, buddy. And then the recording will go on band a little bit later
Sounds
today.
good. Hope everybody closes some deals before the end of this week.
I like it.
Yep.
Y'all have a good one.
Thanks,
Have a good
Elijah.
one.
It's awesome.
Happy to help y'all.